All right, here we go. Let's see here. This is that moment of truth where I got to wait for everything to wake up. Just got to make sure that we're live and everything's good and all the text coming through. So let's see here. Rockfin, are you awake? There's Rockfin. Boom. YouTube, where you at? Ooh, Rockfin beat YouTube. Rockfin was first. YouTube was second. How about those? How about those apples? And Twitter, of course, you are awake as well. Perfect. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Hope everyone's doing well. Happy Monday. Also a great band. Shout out to the people who make this show possible. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron, by the way. And shout out to the folks who make this show possible. Our friends over at Indie Left. Indie Left is a place to find all the content creators you know and love. What they do is they curate a list. They update it twice a day. It consists of articles, streams, videos, you name it. Kind of a one-stop shop to find out everything they got going on and to subscribe to their Discord. Check them out at independentleft.media. That's independentleft.media. All right. So, as you know, earlier in the week before Thursday, we do an interview show. Headline show is on Thursday. The interview show is earlier in the week, and that's what we got going on today. So this gentleman has been on the show before. This is his second appearance. He is a digital rights activist. He is a policy expert in the fields of broadband and digital expansion. He works with the EFF, the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and he's a brilliant guy. And we're going to be breaking down both the California broadband bill and the broadband portion of the infrastructure bill. So it's a whole lot of broadband talk and what the future of broadband holds. Please welcome back to the show, Ernesto Falcon. Ernesto, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back. I still think that Placone and Falcone, that's the digital rights podcast the world needs. I mean, it sells itself.
It sounds good.
So thanks for doing the show today. Thank you for taking some time out. We're going to jump right into the issues here. So the California broadband bill, it officially passed a little while ago. I mean, it passed in July here. But what exactly? I mean, I know there was a lot of back and forth. I'm fortunate enough to be on your guys' email list. So I saw a lot of the back and forth that was going on. What exactly ended up passing? What are the details of AB 156, and what does this mean for the future of broadband in California?
So I would say long term, this should turn into arguably the largest investment in public fiber the country's ever seen, because a lot of the programs. So I'll give a quick basics of what it is. So it's a grant program, which is like the standard, like here's some money to build. It's a long-term low-interest loan program specifically for government, nonprofits, school districts, tribes, and cooperatives. So the non-traditional players who could deploy the infrastructure, they got around $7 billion in long-term financing available to them, which is huge, and I could go into that in a sec. And it's in fact already launched an entity primarily run by the rural county governments called I believe the Golden State Connect Authority. So that's going to deliver some amazing stuff in a handful of years as it builds. And then it's a handful of programs to put the state in a position to assist communities come up with their plans, figure out how to access the finance they would need to bring those plans into reality. It very much is akin to the effort that happened with electricity in this country, where the large government entity in the center kind of worked and partnered up with lots of local players to help them figure out how to build it themselves. That's essentially the heart of what California's law is promoting the creation of local options for 21st century access.
Now, when you say like the grants are available, where all are these grants available? Are they limited to, say, rural areas, or is this the entire state of California?
So the grants are only going to be available in areas that just lack broadband, like a basic broadband service. So it's limited in the sense of, you're only talking about, maybe 1 to 2 million people who are going to see an impact from that. Although those are quite frankly, those are the most expensive people to connect, because they're the ones that are furthest out or in the most difficult to serve. Even urban markets have portions of the city that are just unconnected. So it's very narrow in where that goes, but very generous in the amount of money there. So it should handle even the most expensive efforts to finish the job. The program I think that's really at the heart of it is what's called the Loan Loss Reserve Program, and that's the program I mentioned earlier that any city right now can look at their broadband issues and say I want, and can come up with a 30-year plan with a mortgage type program that's designed around enabling them to take the mortgage to build all the answers they need. Um, and that's why it promotes fiber in particular, because fiber optics is really kind of this long-term infrastructure that if you build it, you're probably good for several decades on out. It's not going to be something that people would correctly spend on some mobile hotspots or some basic internet access to build out. It really is about long-term planning and a multi-year plan. And we're already seeing this now. The Los Angeles County government has been actively contemplating deploying fiber to the home in areas that lack fiber to the home, and some building it themselves. And a handful of communities up in Northern California, I think are undergoing that kind of introspection discussion of we could solve this ourselves, so why should we? And having that internal debate.
So let me ask you just a few specifics here off of what you just said, just for to get some of the details straight here. The low mass reserve program, like could you spell that? Like, where can people learn more about that?
Yeah, so the EFF put a blog about, just the title is California's broadband law promotes local choice, if I remember right. But it's called the Loan Loss Reserve Program, and really the easy way to think about it is you have mortgages for housing, right? Like you have access to a loan that's paid over a preferable rate over 30 years for a big investment. That's essentially what this is. It's essentially a municipal, tribe, school district, nonprofit, or a handful of other similar nonprofit or public entity loan program. Um, and the key thing on this one is it's not restricted to only areas that lack broadband. So you can be as ambitious as you want, and there's plenty of funding there for every community. From the San Franciscos to the way out in the middle of nowhere, far rural townships. So um, I suspect the most motivated and kind of ahead of the curve communities are going to apply for the funding on the first round, and in a few years, a lot more will start applying as they see the benefits of simply just building and owning.
So somebody, I mean, let's just use me as an example for the sake of conversation. I live in the San Pedro neighborhood of Los Angeles. What could I do now as an individual? Like, what are some things I could do to try to get municipal broadband as a valid option in my community?
So the first person is your county supervisor. There's I believe 5 county supervisors for Los Angeles County, each representing a portion of the community. And they are the ones that are they've already voted to study this, and so they're already now in a fact gathering space of benefits to the community if they build it themselves. What kind of model should they choose? EFF we advocate for open access fiber, meaning the county should just build it and make it open for any players to just release capacity off of it. That way, uh, especially in a really populated area, you can have lots of different options, right? You can have lots of small private players. You can even have the school library come up with something, right? It's just the opportunities to solve your own problems are greater when the infrastructure is made open and accessible, and at a rental price, if you will, that is as low as possible to do. Because and naturally the large ISPs are going to hate this because they enjoy charging a premium for broadband access, especially even in areas that are very lucrative to serve at lower prices. They're going to be under a lot of pressure to figure out how to lower their prices to keep up, or if it comes to reality. Right now, they're going to see if they make sure that to head it off at the pass, prevent the county from even doing anything in the space.
I mean, I was gonna get into this, but what are some things? Because yeah, a lot of people who watch this show regularly, they follow this issue pretty intensely. But a quick, very quick nuts and bolts for anyone who's maybe not super familiar with this issue. Basically, the big cable companies have a near monopoly on our internet infrastructure in this country, and municipal broadband is putting the internet infrastructure back into the city's hands where it should have been in the first place. So this bill in California, which is a pretty extensive bill, and the way you're describing it, a lot of it almost sounds too good to be true. Um, the big cable companies probably aren't going to want to see this happen because it really cuts into their apple cart. So what are some of the things specifically that they're doing to try to prevent counties from moving forward?
So I think the first strategy is going to be don't take on this expense yourself. We can offer it for cheaper than it would cost you to do, right? And they're going to. I have little doubt they are going to start making offerings to local neighborhoods that look really good
Hmm.
in terms of but with like this kind of probably a string attached. Sign up for a 2-year contract, or sign up for for 3 years and we'll drop your price in half, right? And so all that's really trying to do is lock people in to make it harder for an alternative to finance the infrastructure. And so it's worth every penny to them right now because they charge in the monopoly areas. They charge maybe 2 or 3 times what they should be charging for broadband.
Right.
So if you shave off, it's like, okay, if you're 300% above market price, you shave off 100, 1/3 of that, you're still 200% above market price, but sure looks good to people who may not realize they're being taken to the cleaners. And
Hmm.
and if you could attach that to cementing them in as customers with like long-term contracting and early termination fees and other ways of making it awfully hard to switch, um, it's worth it to them completely in the long run. 10 years from now, if they head this off, they will have made billions from the political investment, which will probably in the range of the hundreds of millions.
So, as far as the day to day, as this is unrolled throughout the state, hopefully, um, how will this kind of change people's relationships with their cable companies? Will this bring jobs into the area for local people because someone's going to have to, be the customer service for this? Someone's going to have to, do the upkeep. So will it kind of be? I mean, will it truly make the internet a public utility, kind of like what they have in Chattanooga, Tennessee?
I think it'll make a huge difference in the price and the speed people get, simply because cable enjoys a position of offering not the best speeds or services at an awfully high price, and that is um, that's unsustainable if you get something else building. And so how they respond, it's kind of up to them. I mean, they can certainly improve their service, but I think at the end of the day, that the limitation on cable here is this: um, the cable networks are a mix of hybrid, or what are called hybrid fiber and cable. So they've replaced most of the center portion of the network, if you will, with 21st century infrastructure, and they've left the outskirts of it that connect to the households with decades old infrastructure. And they've done that to really plus up the speeds that you can get now. That's why most people can get a decent download speed on cable, but not such a great an upload speed, and an awful lot of probably not the best latency in some respects. So that only matters so long as you want to be the fastest player amongst all of the abysmal options that exist otherwise, right? DSL, wireless cell phones. Um, the moment some other player starts delivering multi-gigabit fast cheap internet, they only have one way to respond, which is to replace their cable systems with fiber.
Hmm.
Otherwise, well, and there's kind of two things happening at once. One, people don't need multiple gigabits today, but they will need it eventually. So it's kind of like sets in motion that as our needs and the consumption of our products and services, the thing we do on the internet keeps growing, eventually we're going to need this really high capacity stuff, the stuff I call 21st century access. Um, we're not there yet, but we've accelerated the trend quite a lot in the last couple of years, especially with like distributed work in particular.
Hmm.
So that I think the nature people see internet access has changed radically because most people see it as akin to water and electricity. There's a Consumer Reports survey that found about 3 out of 4 people equate broadband access with water and electricity at this point. And so the public mindset has shifted to like, okay, well now it needs to be good and decent and workable and anywhere I live, anywhere I want to move, any household I go. And I think that's kind of the assumption that it should be like that is what's going to drive, I think, a lot of the decisions in the coming years. Because it's not right. It's not like that in lots of places.
Well, we still, I mean, as you pointed out, we still have actual digital divides in this country where there are completely underserved areas, or I guess, internet deserts, so to speak, where people really don't have any options. Um, Are there any Is there any kind of red tape associated with this bill? I mean, are there any details that should concern us a little bit? Because it's just like the way you're describing it. I mean, this sounds like a really cool holiday gift almost. Like it sounds too good to be true. Are there any asterisks we need to be aware of?
I mean, it's going to take a lot of willingness and work at the political leadership level to
Okay.
actually pull it off, right? It's like it's like the biggest public works project a local entity has ever faced in modern times. We've done electricity, we've done the roads, those have been built, so now we're just maintaining these things, right? You're building something new at a scale close to that. So courage, right? Vision, and I think what's really important from the public standpoint is this is not something that will happen within a year's time. In order to really build correctly, something that'll last for 1 to 2 generations, we are looking at 5 to 6 years of construction work. It is not something that will just happen quickly, and so it's not a matter of red tape per se. It's more just the scope and the complexity of the construction effort here is huge. And it's not that not a single person's connected until year 5 or year 6. It'll just be built out in sections. So like the first section will probably be done within 12 to 18 months, and then the next section will be expanded from there. And so you'll get to 100% 5 or so years from now, but it'll be in stages.
So
But it's
what
very
is
long term.
Sure. So what will it take for construction to officially start? Like what are some of the T's that need to be crossed and I's that need to be dotted?
So like for your area, because you're in the Los Angeles County area, right?
Yes.
First you got who's the entity that's going to do it. The county I think is actively contemplating it. The county government, that is. In the rural markets of California, there's already what's called the Joint Power Authority, meaning a lot of county governments have assembled, kind of like the Avengers, like they've all assembled into this political entity called the Golden State Connect Authority, which is explicitly created and now exists just to do this, just to build the infrastructure to all their counties. So you can kind of measure like where are they at in the decision making space. The rural counties of California have already decided we're building it, so they're just getting ready to apply for the money when it becomes available. Which I think it'll be like mid next year when the program's up and running to apply. Los Angeles County is still studying this, right? So they're still in the stage of doing analysis and hiring a firm to do the cost modeling and kind of the what's the price tag and how do we do it and what's the smartest way to do it stage. So they're not building next year. At that stage, they're probably building. They're going to have to come up with a plan first, and next year will be I think the decision point. Do we move forward now and implement? Which then you go into 2023 to apply for money and begin hiring crews to start building.
So the Golden State Connect Authority is a newer entity that is dedicated solely to this cause. Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, so if you look them up, so Golden State Connect Authority, let me see, it's basically a 37 county government entity. So 37 county governments and all pretty much throughout the rural side of California have jointly created this entity that is designed to be the bonding, loan application, construction contracting entity to build. Their intention is to build open access fiber, and
Mhm.
so um, you saw this already in Utah. So in Utah, you have an entity that looks exactly like this, or very similar to this, called Utopia Fiber, and it's just a joint effort of multiple different local governments, kind of coming together to make their really big, ambitious plan to connect the entire communities with fiber.
So they're starting. I mean, I got their website pulled up now. They're starting with the rural counties, the places that are completely underserved. But then it looks like their second bullet point here: install and operate open access municipal broadband infrastructure, starting with select initial locations and then expanding to additional sites. So they don't plan on just simply staying rural. They are eventually going to get into the cities, presumably, and all over the state. Is that correct?
So the beautiful thing about them is they're motivated to do this, meaning there's an awful lot of hiccups and trips and missteps that will happen right as you build because it's a brand new huge project, and they're willing to take that on and not stress it. Right? They have an objective, which is to get everyone connected out there. the knowledge that they will obtain from doing that is going to be valuable to everyone else in California that is, mostly in a cable monopoly market.
Mhm.
If you're in a market that has, a fiber provider and a cable company and maybe another, high-speed wireless player, you're probably not going to be a community that will make sense for this kind of effort, simply because it needs to be financed in a very long term, and there has to be sufficient demand for the kind of long-term thinking and investment. But most of California cities, even Los Angeles County, Los Angeles County is only, I think, 30 to 40% fibered up. So, at least 60% of the people, which is, I think, 4 to 5 million people, don't have access to 21st century access. So who's going to meet that need? So I think an ideal dream scenario would be the Golden State Connect Authority, moves first, learns a lot in some of the most challenging parts of the country to build, and is willing to share that knowledge, basically be subcontracted out by other municipalities, who will ask them to expand into their neighbor, into them, right? So because they're going to be surrounded by, neighboring cities, neighboring counties. The reason why, in California, thanks to the legislature and the governor, California has no restriction on that. Chattanooga, Tennessee, has like the world's fastest ISP at one of the best prices, sitting there, constrained because state law says they're not allowed to expand beyond their borders. And they're so revenue heavy, they would connect every surrounding township and county with their core fiber network in a heartbeat. I mean,
Well,
they
and it
would.
drives the rest of the states nuts. When you look at the map of all the municipal broadband efforts, Tennessee has it everywhere, and it's
Yeah.
because they all see what Chattanooga has, and they're like, "What the heck? This
Why
is
don't they have it?
awesome." Yeah, why
Yeah,
don't
and
we
it's
have this?
completely a creature of state law. Has nothing to do with willingness. They've in fact, petitioned the Federal Communications Commission years ago to abolish the state restraint that prevents them from expanding beyond their electricity territory. I mean, that's essentially what
Could
the
the
law says.
FCC do that?
It tried. It got litigated by the ISPs, and then the broadband companies prevailed. And the FCC does not have the authority to do that. So, the federal effort has been attempted in terms of the regulator. Congress can always pass a law that changes that, or the state itself, which I think is probably the more correct place. The state itself just needs to come to terms with the fact that they are suppressing a gold mine, for no good reason other than, at the request of cable companies.
Mhm. So let me clarify a term real quick just to make sure. When they say open access, and
Mhm.
when you say open access, that basically means, just as a clarify here, that doesn't mean like you're going to have Wi-Fi and anyone can hop on it and you're completely insecure. What that means is that it means open access from a connectivity standpoint of getting. I believe the way you described this in the past on my show, basically it's like it's a big spine of infrastructure, and then other communities can connect to that spine, and that feeds the community. Is that what you mean when you say open access? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so like, to put it in like kind of practical, like what would this in real life application look like? Particularly, so RCRC, which is the Rural County Representatives of California, which is the entity that created the Golden State Authority. What they want to do is create little hubs, like little warehouses throughout the community that are connected to fiber and have, hundreds or thousands of gigabits of capacity sitting there. And so any private company or public entity can just go to that warehouse and say, hey, I'd like to rent some shelf space. Here, I'm going to buy a 40 gigabit switch. It's like $400, $800. I'll pay the electricity. Um, and let me kind of find a space to plug into, to connect to the warehouse. And then they have to go to, consumers, people at the other end, to the houses who are already wired up to that hub, and say, hey, I got a server set up here. If you want to sign up with me, here's what I'll charge you for what I can deliver. And if you go to, here, let's see, like, Utopia Fiber has like a good page that shows, like the pricing. um let's see, you can find the right search term here. um Oop, there it is.
And this
No,
is
here,
what
I'll
they
I'll share.
did.
Yeah, I'll share it in chat, so then
Okay,
that
cool.
you can see this in practical terms. Okay, so, the ISPs will be the entities that market and ask people to, connect to their service, and they're the ones that handling their traffic over the infrastructure that they will rent capacity from. And so if you look at that link right there, yep, and you scroll down a bit, in practice in Utah, and there's a few ways you can do this. And I'll give the other example if it isn't what Utopia does, because Utopia handles a lot of the running of the network, which is a little different than other means you can do this. So scroll down a little bit, and then you can see a little bit more, a little more.
Okay.
So down there at the provider end, so each of those providers are just some small business, right, that lives somewhere in the Utah area where people are connected to the wire, and they bought the hardware that connected the warehouse with the multi-city entity built the wires and the connection to. They rent some capacity, and then they connect people to modems or other means of connecting. So these are the prices they charge, and you can see the prices are pretty static, because it's as low as you can get in most of these ways. So the the way they really market to people is other services or other things that people would find attractive to have from a broadband carrier. Customer service, is kind of a premium, amongst these players. And the county, or in this instance Utopia, their job is just to maintain the wires themselves, address any outages that are on their end, and just make sure that they have a licensing process for some entity to pay for a lease, right? And a way to use the wire.
So
So
Utopia is kind of the nucleus, so to speak, and then all of these different companies are local entities that are connected to it, and then provide internet directly to the consumer.
yep. And so you think about how low the bar is to become a company, right? To become a business in this space. There's little reason you couldn't have some enterprising college kids, or some people that are just really technically savvy, that are motivated to come up with the 10, 20, $30,000 to like launch a business, right? Which is like unheard of in the broadband space. Broadband space is run by multi-billion-dollar corporations. So it really does democratize access. It brings it very close to home, brings the prices way down, the speeds way up. The other way, this is more on the state side, because the state's building what's called middle mile fiber, and I forgot to mention that earlier, but the state's got its own program it's doing that's an open access play. The more sophisticated the network, or the more sophisticated, like if a municipality wants to run their own thing, they just need just the cold dead wire, if you will. They don't need any hardware connected to it or any computers running any part of it. They just need the wire itself, and so that's what's called dark fiber. And so I think you'll see a mix of, there's a mix of players out there. There's players who need more on the front end handled for them in terms of how the network they're connecting to run their own offering, and entities who want to run everything from front to end and just need a wire, the set of wires given to them to make use of, and then they'll handle the they'll handle all the hardware and the server side on throughout the network.
How optimistic are you California's going to pull this off?
I mean, highly
Yeah?
optimistic, and I think the at least particularly in the rural side, because they're motivated. I think when you come from a world of what kind of preceded the creation of this California law out there is the bankruptcy of Frontier Communications. And so the one private option, so they don't even have cable in lots of other places, right? They have DSL, 10 down, 1 up, internet, satellite, broadband. They have some pretty abysmal
Yeah, I
choices
think a lot of
for.
people didn't even realize that was a thing until the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Like a lot
Yep.
like a lot of people like who don't follow this stuff, they didn't even know that was possible. But it's like, yeah, it is, and it's just because of profit. There's
Yep.
no reason.
Well, and it's not as profitable to invest the next generation stuff out there. So
Right.
I think they because and the bankruptcy is a big part of that. A big private company is not well situated to handle this. It's going to have to be thought of as breaking even, right? Just like let's just get have enough revenue to pay the bill, but not like try to make a killing doing this. So they're motivated because they realize their private options are not coming, and so if they don't build it, who will? And they have the advantage of groups like the Institute for Self-Local Reliance and other entities who've done a lot of good interviews and podcasts and demonstration that a lot of the townships with very small numbers of people in very rural areas have gigabit fiber simply because they decided to do it themselves. So the knowledge that it's doable, combined with the motivation, I think will yield some really great results from them. My big worry would be the cities, because the cities, I think, are cursed with the idea that, oh, we have broadband, so what's the problem? And may not understand that there is this pending future where very low latency, near real time infrastructure in the multiple gigabits range is going to be the need, the economic need. This is already realized in other countries. China, for example, is building the only fiber all over their country. Europeans, or most of the European nation, is going to universal fiber.
Yeah, they're
So
building broadband cities. Like they're
yeah,
building broadband centric cities because they understand the direction just work in general is going, and they want to be in the loop.
that's exactly right. I think distributed work is going to accelerate the realization that we don't have a viable economic base if people aren't willing, because you don't just need the businesses that are local to make an economy work now. You can have people, the whole tech sector is allowing people to work remotely in lots of places. So where are you going to move and where you're going to buy your house and live long term is going to be, if depending on the kind of work you do. If you do work that really can't be done remote primarily, is going to be connected to your connection. And so if you have a choice between a house that's connected to kind of an old cable network and a slow connection, and a house that's connected to fiber, I mean, they've already studied this. I mean, the Fiber Broadband Association had this study that shows property value changes by like 1 to 3% for fiber connected homes, and no doubt it's because the demand from buyers are looking at the connectivity as an attractive asset and are willing to pay a little bit more for the property. So I think that's going to get I think that's going to trend more rather than less, simply because we're switching over to distributed work in more places.
And it's just so amazing how slowly people are waking up to this. And it's just it's one of those things, like, the corporate media doesn't report on this too often. And, I mean, as you and I can both speak to, this isn't the sexiest topic in the world until you find out about what it can do. Then
Right.
it's like the sexiest. But on the surface, it's like when you say municipal broadband, like people aren't lining up like, oh man, tell me more. But until they hear about it, and then they're like, oh wow, I gotta go, I gotta email my mayor, I gotta email my city council person. But it's like, I have a friend in particular. She got a work from home gig, went to this town in Kentucky where she's from. I forget the name of the town, but they have municipal broadband there. She ended up staying there
Right.
because she said, I get better internet here than in Los Angeles, the show
Yeah.
business capital of the world. I get better internet in this rural town in Kentucky because we have municipal broadband. Oh, and by the way, I pay half as much for it. And she didn't even know about these issues. And then she's like, wow, how is this? Who would have thought this? Who would have thought, oh, I can't leave rural Kentucky because of the broadband? Sorry, Los Angeles. No offense to rural Kentucky, but it's kind of
We have an
it's kind of
expectation of
mind
being,
blowing to
yeah, at the
people,
top
you
with
know?
the number of businesses and kind of economic powerhouses we have in the state. And we're responding. This is the moment of awakening. This multi-billion-dollar state program that is a mix of $4 billion in grants and $7 billion in long-term financing. A state with that kind of economic powerhouse can do it, right? And so this is the aha moment. We have gone through the pandemic. Too many schools had to rent out mobile hotspots as the solution for kids, to connect to their schools in cities, which is unforgivable on its own. And it's time to fix that. And so I think that's what this is now. The Now it's about the political will of local leadership to take on the opportunity they've been given. They have no excuse in terms of the money's now there, and now it's just a matter of the planning and the willingness.
So, let's switch gears a little bit here and go to the broadband portion of the infrastructure bill for just a bit.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I know there's some investment there. It is part of that bill. What's kind of your summary of that? What exact opportunity is there?
Yeah, so equally huge, particularly for states that may be less well resources like California. It's basically about $20 billion in equity and low income subsidies and things that help people afford connectivity, and about $45 billion in construction funding. So the structure is going to be this: the federal government will come up, design the programs for states to apply and submit their what are called action plans. The states have a responsibility to come up with their long-term plan of using those dollars, And there's this kind of back and forth of, the states propose their solution of how they want to use the funding. The federal government has to decide if they agree with that or not, particularly on things like low income, a low cost offering, the type of infrastructure planning they have in mind. And there's lots of provisions in the law that, I would say really trend towards fiber as the key, but it'll come down to state leadership, one, understanding that from a technical standpoint, and two, willing to buck a lot of legacy players who will say, not them, please me, right, in terms of where the money goes. So, if I'm an incumbent that's over invested in legacy old infrastructure, I'm going to make every argument that I'm the smartest investment you could possibly come up with, governor. And I think a lot of states will get it right, but I do worry some states will flub and and not get it right in terms of what to do with this money.
So, where do you recommend, to just kind of give a summary, where can people kind of go to learn more, to kind of, I mean, I know you mentioned a lot of resources, but if you kind of had to, in closing here, to kind of sum it up for people, this is what you can do, this is where you can go, this is how you can stay on top of this, where would you advise them?
So the EFF.org blog, we do write about this regularly, at different steps. And a lot of this are going to be kind of, you're going to have to be motivated to be involved. So the federal government entity is called the National Telecommunications and Information Administration. They're going to have to go through a process of coming up with guidance and suggestions for the states. If you're a nonprofit or an organization or an individual that has a group that you can reach to, that can then reach to their your local electeds, I think they have a huge say in the shape of the program, in terms of because it's designed to be a collaborative effort between the federal government and the states. And so, governors are really important in this equation, and state legislatures, I think, and county governments, and kind of the political subdivisions. All of them are going to be important in terms of setting the stage of what the state itself suggests as its own solution. And EFF will work very hard at providing explanations and support on what is a long-term plan, what does that look like. Only because I think there's a lot of motivated industry players who'd like to mislead or at best, if you will, and misinform intentionally for self-preservation purposes at worst. So it'll require objective technical sophistication at each state. We've done some technical pieces from our engineering team to explain why fiber is the future. And I think gravity's leading us in that direction in most instances. But some people start to think like, oh, maybe there's this magic wireless solution that might work, and I just never knew until we unlocked the capacity to come up with the magic. And there's real physics limitations of a lot of these options, and they're hard and fast. They're not things that you can just and I think that will be portrayed as magic to people who may not understand, like, how much can you really do with satellites? How much can you actually do with wireless, for example? Mm-hmm. And how much everything without exception, from Elon Musk's Starlink to even cable networks, they all use fiber at the core of their upgrading effort.
Well, Ernesto, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for enlightening us on all this. This is a reason for optimism, and in today's day and age, we need every dose of optimism we can get. So thank you so much for. I know I've been following the threads to the best of my ability, so I know that y'all over at the EFF and other organizations as well have worked tirelessly on this issue in California and nationwide as well. So thank you so much for those efforts, and thank you for sharing your information on this show. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right. Cheers. Have a good one.
Have a good one.
Peace. Ernesto Falcon. Folks, start at EFF.org and go from there. UtopiaFiber.com was another good resource. And of course, the Golden State Connect Authority. And I'll also mention, Ernesto mentioned this in the interview too, the Institute of Local Self-Reliance. You can find the municipal broadband map there at muninetworks.org. And Institute of Local Self-Reliance, they do have a great podcast series on these issues. Chris Mitchell over there has been on this show before. So those are some resources to get started. And wow, I mean, there's a lot of potential in this bill. And then, hey, maybe you're thinking, Ron, I don't live in California. But, well, California will kind of set the tone for the rest of the country. Ernesto compares this to the way electricity expanded back in the day. That really is what's upon us. This is the electricity story of our era. At one point, electricity was something reserved for the elites. Then it became a utility and it spread throughout the country. And it's how we know it today. That's happening now with the internet. That is happening right now. And we have a chance to do it right. Or, it could go the other way and we might be telling our kids and grandkids what the internet used to be. It's possible. Anything's possible. Wow. That is it's, sometimes it's like, I know this issue is not a very heavily covered issue. There's just a handful digital rights organizations and me. That's basically it. Those are the only people who cover this show. Who cover this issue. But it's such an important issue and it's connected, no pun intended, to so many other things. Climate change. If more of us are working remotely, we live in a digital village. So it's connected to climate change. It's connected to news and information. It's connected to democratic engagement. How can we instill any type of change without the proper communication vehicle that we need, which in today's day and age is the freaking internet? The internet's a utility in our lives. It's time to start treating it like one, and to not let the most despicable companies in the freaking world, not just in the country, in the freaking world, dictate our right to this entity, to this utility. And it is a right, by the way. The internet is a freaking human right. You know why? Because we, the people, funded and built the internet. All right? Ernesto Falcon. God, I love talking to that guy. He is so intelligent and on point on these issues. And I really gotta. The guy is so composed. If I had his knowledge base on these issues every day, I would just be like, "Do you know what we could have?" I'd be running around to people and debating. Do you know how great that? I applaud his composure. He's just so cool and collected. We're gonna do this. That's awesome. I wish I'd probably scare people away. I would just freak everybody out. I'd be like, we could do a better thing. I call your council member. They'd be like, I don't know what's wrong with him. Venetia David, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. And you say, happy birthday, Ron. Thank you for all the fantastic content this year. We appreciate you. Venetia, thank you so much for that. I hope all is well in the UK. I can't wait to see you on tour. And thank you very much for the super chat contribution. And my birthday was yesterday. And thank you all. By the way, for everybody who wished me a happy birthday on Twitter and on Facebook and on Instagram, thank you very much. I'm one of those people. I don't like to do a whole lot for my birthday, but I had a very wonderful dinner. I got to see some friends, got to chat with my family for a bit, and my wife. My wife gave me a very, very wonderful birthday. And so thank you all so much. And Venetia, thank you very much for the birthday wish. I appreciate that so very much. And over on the Rockfin, Gary, what's up, buddy? Thank you very much for the Rockfin tip. I appreciate that very, very much. You all help keep this show on the air. And of course, if you all want to support this show on the sustainability end, great way to do it. Patreon.com/RonPlacone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content, stand-up videos not available anywhere else. You get all of my content in one place. I post everything there. Audio, podcasts, videos, everything, you name it. Beach walks, you name it. Stand-up, you name it. And I have Zoom shows for my patrons and Rockfin Premium members. I got one tonight, actually, where I tell some new jokes. I do some songs. It's a good time. And I'll make you a theme song. I'm making theme songs for patrons. Makes a wonderful holiday gift, by the way. You can make that gift for someone else. Patreon.com/RonPlacone. Thank you again so much, Venetia David, for the super chat contribution. Thank you, Gary Sipe, for the Rockfin tip. And thank you all for being here. And again, check out EFF.org to really get started on all these issues, and the Institute of Local Self-Reliance. There is a huge opportunity to really take control of our broadband needs, not just in the United States, but in other parts of the world too. Because other parts of the world, they're already going in this direction. But a lot of other places, they have the same thing we have with big cable companies kind of monopolizing things, and they have municipal broadband efforts too. So you got to look at these types of policies and see how it can apply in your community. And it's really up to we, the people, to have the political will to force our local officials. That's the one cool thing about local. There's a lot more transparency. This is why it's important to run for city council. This is why it's important to get involved locally. EFF.org. Thank you guys so much for being here. We'll be back on Thursday with the headlines show, where I do the headlines of the week. And until then, you know the drill. Lucy, she's over on the couch. She says meow. Oh, tour dates. I got them. I got to announce that real quick. Tour dates, ronplacone.com. Tickets are available now for Pittsburgh, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. That's right, Canada. I'm coming. It's my Poutine, not Pipelines tour. Burlington, Vermont, Portland, Maine, Boston, Massachusetts, New York City. All those tickets are available now. Don't wait. Grab them. ronplacone.com. See you guys on Thursday. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow. I say peace, love, a general strike, municipal broadband now. Peace, y'all.